actually kind of funny. That's an interesting point. How come you guys are so excited about the Pulsechain launch, but the testnet that has been forked doesn't even have withdrawals activated?
Yeah, I guess they're going to implement that here shortly. Who knows, man? We'll be in testnet for another couple of years, man. Don't pick on us.
Okay.
Wait, what was the question? That can't they do that after launch?
No, I mean the Shapella upgrade that just happened in Ethereum. This was on I think it was on the 14th of April. So Pulsechain doesn't have that upgrade. So if you stake your Pulse in Pulsechain using the software that they've tested now, how are they gonna enable unstaking? Because they haven't implemented the code that has that functionality ready. This is actually, for the people that are unaware, the reason that I've lately started to call Pulsechain a scam was because of that YouTube stream that Richard Hart did with Matty Allen. I think it was around the end of last year, and he was talking.
Must have been the conference.
Yeah, the Hex conference or whatever. And I think that Matty asked him, so like, will unstaking be possible in Pulsechain? And I was like kind of shocked because, I understand that Richard has had his struggles with launching Pulsechain. I told him in our debate in May last year that it was going to be way harder than he expected, and he was like, no, it's not. It's not harder to like build a complete entirely new layer 1 than it is to launch an ERC20 contract. Obviously, it's much harder. But the thing that made me call it a scam was I was just so disappointed when Matty Allen asked him if unstaking was going to be possible, and he responded, "Yeah, I think he said that the developers of Pulsechain haven't told me that unstaking will not be possible, so therefore I'm assuming that it's going to be available at launch." And then Brett Hepp communicated a few days later that actually they don't have any withdrawal code. They're still waiting for upgrades downstream from Ethereum to be able to get that into the product. And if I've raised $1 billion and I'm launching a layer 1, and my community members ask me like, is withdrawals going to be possible? Like one of the main consensus features in the protocol. And I'm like, I'm assuming that it's there because the developers that are working with me haven't told me that they're not there. That's like gross negligence when it comes to like actually understanding the product that you're offering people. And if you're going around telling people how much more awesome it's going to be than Ethereum, and you don't even know what features your own product has, and you're talking about the most important features to the protocol, then that's like a level of disinterest and laziness when it comes to your own product that I think, that then it sort of clicked for me, like, why is Pulsechain taking so long? It's not only because it's difficult, it's also because the leader himself doesn't really pay that much attention to it. And that was sort of a turning point for me. I got pretty disappointed by that. So I said, at this point, if you raise $1 billion for the Pulsechain mainnet and then another $1 billion for an app, and you don't even keep track of like the development process, then that's like past the point where I'm going to say that this is a legitimate project. So I was a bit disappointed about that. That's why I call it a scam. Maybe I've overreacted. Maybe it's like, maybe you can be like negligent and lazy when it comes to your own product, and it's still not a scam. Like maybe it's unfair use of that word. So I'm willing to like step back on that, but that's sort of the rationale and the reason why I called Pulsechain a scam on Peter McCormack's podcast and so on.
What about the fact that the funds are still there, though? That there was a move to protect that purchasing power, and some other projects have removed sacrifice funds while those funds are still there, that there's been development progress.
No, I mean, if the funds are still there and Pulsechain is launching, it just means that he didn't need the funds to deploy Pulsechain. It didn't cost that amount of money to deploy Pulsechain. So that actually turns it more into a scam for me. Like, why would you raise multiple billions of dollars for people if you don't even need it to build a product for them? Like, if your goal is actually to enrich your community, why do you require?
Well, I mean, he wouldn't be able to use the funds, though. He wouldn't be able to use those funds to build the, under securities law, he wouldn't be able to use the funds from the sacrifice to develop the project.
Yeah. And why are you taking the money then?
Because he didn't put a, how some people do glory. How some people do a capped raise, yeah, where they're like, we need $20 million or we need $40 million or something, and then once they hit that cap, then they don't accept any more money. This was uncapped, so I guess there was always a risk that it would run higher than what was necessary.
Yeah, but as the creator of the round, you're in control of those parameters. If you want to have a cap round, you make a cap round, and if you want to make sure that you have distribution within your community, you just airdrop the tokens to hex holders. You don't ask them for sacrifices, just to drain them from as much money as possible, and don't even use the funds to develop the product that they're waiting for. that's like not fair business in my view.
I think we might be sort of like deviating subtly onto like a financial path that I think is less relevant than what you were saying first, which is to tighten up your wording, perhaps rather than scam. And this is not my opinion. I'm just trying to sort of reword your suggestion that there was a level of apathy that you wouldn't, or like you suspected from that comment, that there was a level of apathy that was surprising for someone who should be like the keenest out of everyone. Like, because I'm personally desperate to know more about Pulsechain, certain parameters, particularly with the inner work, like how things are going to work to do with the LPs. Without going into detail, there's questions that I have about the LPs that I don't know the answers to, which I was hoping at some point to hear from Richard. But you're saying on this particular one, you would think that if community members are as keen as I am to know the details, you expected Richard to be like really, really in tune with all of the details of the project.
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing. This was at the time where he was still doing like the outrage marketing thing. So he was like shopping a lot, flexing his wealth, and then also in the podcast he was talking about how many beautiful women he was fucking. And I mean, that's okay. But if it's all like a marketing act, if you're saying all that stuff and doing all that stuff like as a marketing act, that's fine. But then it doesn't make it doesn't really add up if you're also completely unaware of the development of your own project. Then your focus may actually really be on like what you see in those videos. It just became clear to me like maybe that's actually the focus. Like maybe those are the things that he started to care about, because he's obviously not caring about Pulsechain at this point if he doesn't even know if withdrawals are going to be possible. Maybe because that was a question that even Matty Allen knew to ask that question. I had that question in the top of my head. Like that's an obvious question that you as a developer of this protocol would be concerned about. It doesn't really make sense to not keep track of those things unless you've sort of unless you sort of given up on it made me think that maybe Pulsechain can't launch. Maybe there's regulatory reasons that it's not launching, and you just gotta like keep up a show or something. And this is the reason that you're not actually paying attention to the protocol. But then it's also a scam. But look, I'm happy to take back the word. But I mean, I just thought that it was pretty offensive not to understand what's going on in the development of your protocol when you have been saying like, oh, Ethereum is going to have tons of bugs and Pulsechain is going to be awesome and it's going to be faster, it's going to be this and this and that. Like he's still saying to this day that Pulsechain is going to be more deflationary. Everyone who knows who Ethereum works understands that the deflationary aspect is a function of how much fees you charge. So you can't be like cheaper and more deflationary. They're like two sides of the same coin. So if you're going around and saying those kinds of statements about your product and you don't actually know anything about what the product looks like that you're developing, where do you draw the line? Like where do you draw the line of when something becomes just dishonest marketing?
You didn't think it can? You don't think it can still be cheap, but then people just have to burn more units?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Tangent wanted the word.
So I want to float two ideas, and then I'm going to let Crypto 7 chime in because I'm sure he's got some great comments as well. I was going to say, do you think it's possible, and this is like rhetorical for now because I want 7 to be able to chime in as well, but do you think it's possible that when Richard answered that question unsatisfactorily, in your opinion, that it could have been, and this might be reaching a little bit, but it could have been like an anti-competitive strategy to not allow other people that might be trying to also launch similar L1s to know the answer to that question? That might be possible. And then with the LV stuff that you mentioned, because at one point I had a similar, like when it was going on for a really long time and quite a lot of the community was actively asking him to stop, being like, dude, we're getting so wrecked by this bear market. Like we're poor as fuck and it's hurting our feelings seeing you like, roll around in Lambos and Bentleys and fucking shit and buying like all this Louis Vuitton. And I asked one of the other OGs, like early Hexicans, I said, do you think it's possible that this outrage marketing is just an excuse to go out and buy all this expensive shit? And he said, well, Richard could go and do that and just not tweet about it. Like, as in, he doesn't, like, he could just buy the shit and not tweet about it, which means he's definitely not, he doesn't need the excuse, so to speak. You know what I mean? So I thought that was a pretty solid answer as to the outrage marketing actually being legitimate. 7?
Hi, Eric. Great to see you. I think it's another sign. We've got another significant player taking an interest in Pulsechain. We had Ivan on Tech on my channel a couple of days ago, and it's great to see you here in the stream now. I also wanted to say something, Eric, about you had previously accused Richard of not being able to go to the States because he'd be arrested, and you were quick to acknowledge that you were wrong about that. And I thought it was a mark of the man that you were saying, listen, I was wrong about that. Richard Hart wasn't arrested when he went to see his sick mum in the States. And so I just wanted to put on record here, because we've spoken privately, but we've never spoken publicly like this before. I just wanted to say I thought that was really good that you did that, Eric, and that really lifted your stock with me a lot. So thanks very much for that. And on the issue of unlocking the staking there associated with Ethereum, my understanding is that that's getting corrected this week. But I've been told not to say too much and things. People tell me things, but I can't say too much. But I think they're all over that, as we say in the UK. I think that's being corrected. And,
I think he left, dude.
I think has he gone?
He left. He left when you started talking.
Oh well.
Twitter Spaces can be buggy. Hopefully he comes back.
No way, dude.
He'll probably be back soon.
He just left.
I think it's funny, isn't it? These people have obviously see Pulsechain as an opportunity to raise their profile and things, and it's good in a sense, really. I mean, that's just kind of, it's a sign. He obviously knows that Pulsechain's legit, and I think he was sort of trying to explain why he was saying things in the past. So, you know, it all just seems a bit of a meme, doesn't it? It's like listening to him talking. It's all a bit, you know, it's like that other guy who said Pulsechain was never going to launch. Then as soon as we got V3, he let know that he was setting up his cryptos to be operational on Pulsechain. You know, they just basically want to ride the interest, don't they? I think that's what was going on. I think in that sense it's a good thing, really. It's kind of like, that's just the strategy, isn't it?
Eric's real, man. He's critical of blockchain technology for the right reasons. He's critical of Bitcoin, ETH. Like, his criticisms of Pulsechain, I share those same criticisms. And that doesn't make it a scam. Those are just criticisms. And the best way to quiet criticism is to launch a fucking blockchain.
True, mate.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah,
that's true. Oh well.
I think Eric was trolling.
Yeah, that's important.
Trolling on that thing, though.
I just wanted to preface a couple questions to community by first saying that I myself am somebody who finds myself disinterested until I'm behind the 8 ball and have to really, really, really engage in something that might be difficult to understand or tackle. That being said, I wanted to say that what regulatory environment exists that might prevent Richard Hart from launching Pulsechain, 1, and 2, what functionality doesn't exist? Like, he was talking about staking withdrawals, I think. What functionality doesn't exist on the testnet as it exists now in version 4 that would prevent us from launching? And that's it.
Well, if it's the SEC, they could do a cease and desist like they did to the Ton network back in 2019. That was a pre-launch. Remember, like the Telegram open network?
Yep. So the implementation of those soft forks for the withdrawals, I mean, that's the primary one. You don't technically need it, but there's no reason not to have it since it's live on Ethereum. But dude, he rolls out the utility features in phases, right? So when we first got V3, we didn't have all of the Pulsex features and stuff at the initial launch. So like, that's pretty standard. These are things that we had, I think 7 earlier was saying, you know, he probably has a little inside info. They're probably taking care of the deposit feature this week. I think you're probably looking at least a week of testing afterward. So that's why I'm on kind of the safe side, the 2 weeks thing, you know. But it's nothing, it's not like there's a missing engine, you know, and we're trying to sell the car. It's just a matter of tidying up the well understood features that have to be activated. If you're not nervous when you're trying to build something big and important, then you're not building something big and important. If you don't feel the constant, you know, anxiety of wanting to do your best, then you're probably not putting anything up to risk anyway.
So like when, you know, I wish that Eric was still here because I wanted to like bring something up that I don't think many people have been talking about. You know how back in the day, some of the networks that used to copy, they wanted to launch a mainnet like EOS did or Tron did, and they would just kind of copy Ethereum, but then they would launch their own mainnet. Like, do you think that that's a possibility where all of a sudden we're here and then we're all everyone's like, oh, we're at 10 seconds, we're so slow. And then all of a sudden we go back somehow to like B2B in the next like year or something. And then it's like all of a sudden it's back to like so much faster and all this.
So I reached out to Richard like a year and a half ago to talk about throughput scalability. And I asked him, I pitched like a couple of different ideas to see if there was any compatibility with his vision for Pulsechain. And he said, yeah, like back then, even they were already focusing on downstream throughput efficiency. Now, with all the time that has passed, I'm thinking he owns enough of the Pulsechain coin and the Pulsex coin that like any governance, he'll have a vote dominance in. You still need the social consensus layer of all the validators agreeing to fork if you went drastic from like Ethereum 2.0 proof of stake to some hybrid proof of stake, proof of history, super throughput consensus layer. Like you would have to, that'd be a hard fork, which would require validators to, change what client version they're running. But I think Richard has enough influence that everyone would be like, if he thinks it's the best, then that's what we'll do. So I think in the future, you could have a hard fork to a higher throughput layer one. I don't think he gives a shit about that, though. I think just given how the industry is moving, I think he's going to just embrace the ZK rollups and the layer two solutions on Pulsechain.
Cookies, I really like what you said about if you're not at least a little bit nervous, then you're not doing any world-changing shit. You know what I mean? I think that's a takeaway of the commentary. And thank you for your commentary. I've got another question for you. So unless you guys are still discussing what you're talking about there, but Eric made another comment that I wanted to follow up with him on, but then he left, about how he said you can't have a system that is you can't have a system or a token that is deflationary and also claim that it's low fees. However, in my opinion, if you're starting off with hyper low, so the deflationary just means the fees might rise quicker. So we're talking about rates of change rather than the actual fee itself. Do you agree that that comment that he made, at least for the start, is not like that you can have a system that is low fee and more deflationary, and it just means that maybe later it'll become higher fee?
Of course. Yeah, no, I think you knew that. ID knew it. That's why he kind of dodged making a big deal out of it. But yeah, Eric was just taking the more adversarial opinion side of it. But obviously, it's a relationship of the rate of change and the horizon of observation. So yeah, I mean, and it's those are the arguments. Once you have somebody, not necessarily Eric, but once you have somebody who is poking at Pulsechain and like trying to FUD it maybe, or trying to come up with like the concern case against it, when they start taking argument sides like, well, how is it going to be lower fee if it's doing more of it's like, wait a second. So we've moved away from the failure of the project to, well, how are you going to be so happy if the project is so successful that it's causing all of the problems that a hyper successful Ethereum has? It's like, well, okay, so I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but we'll be crossing that bridge in Lambos, right? So
yeah, absolutely.